Hello guys, it's me back again, doing another motor movie reviews, this time with Tenet, the new Christopher Nolan film. And, yeah, I just got back from seeing over the weekend at Nuki, and I thought, it was alright. I'm just feeling like Christopher Nolan's done so many of those films, of like complex action films that are also very intellectual and stuff. I just feel like it's his attempt to be Bond, essentially. It's him auditioning for James Bond, and Broccoli, whoever is in charge of this stuff anymore, just give it to him already, for goodness sake. It can't be that bad. Maybe he's gonna stop making movies like this. Because, okay, the main thing I have with this film is the fact that it's emphasizes sort of Christopher Nolan's main story problems, if you will. The idea that he is very good in story, dense, all this and that and whatnot, but with character is flat. Because throughout this movie, there's only one character who has any sort of story, like a British chick who's married to some Russian oligarch who's the bad guy. More on that in a minute. And she's a good character. And but yeah, that's just the main thing. She's the only good character in it because is the only one who has a story. The rest of them don't. They're just there as plot devices. Oh look, the main character is just a plot device. Robert Pattinson, who's surprisingly good, and it has is a plot device of this and that, and it's from A to B to Z, just like zigzag, and it's nothing really interesting. And that's just the main problem with Christopher Nolan's movies. If you go back to Inception, in Inception, the characters in there, also wouldn't. It's just this thing. Christopher Nolan has always been good on plot. I think Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic, has said this well, better than I can, that he's very good on plot, Christopher Nolan, but he's very terrible on character. I think the Batman movies that he made were an exception to this because he had something to work off, so it came a little bit more naturally. The same way that Quentin Tarantino used to be not particularly good at writing female characters, and was only really good at that after Jackie Brown, because he had a source to work with. To be fair, Inglourious Basterds was good as well, but then again, he grew up from being like a sulky teenager that he was in the early years. But that's just another thing for another time. The plot itself is interesting, but some of it doesn't make any sense. Like in in some of these action scenes, it has a sort of Terminator paradox, if you remember the Terminator about like Kyle Reese going back in time to save John Connor's mother from getting killed, and then turns out to be John Connor's father, even though that wouldn't really make sense. At least in the Terminator, the film is really good. It's one of my favorites, actually, the first one. The second one is very good, but this isn't even like Terminator Generator Salvation. I mean, not as bad as 3, but 3's a bit lame as opposed to crap, I guess. What else? Kenneth Branagh in this movie. Oh yeah, especially the plot stuff. There's spoilers, by the way, because this is majorly spoilerific. In one of the major scenes, there's 2 major scenes in this movie where what was it? The main character and Robert Pattinson are some of the other characters. There's a car chase scene where there's a third car coming the other way, and what's his name? It's the main character who's coming back in time to stop whatever's going on. They have the lament configuration. That's what I'll call it. Hellraiser is much better, actually. That has Doug Bradley in it in his best role, and Ashley Lawrence, really good actress. Well, at least I think she is. And filmed a lot in North London that I didn't know. Maybe I'll just go and visit Barnet and Brent again. Maybe not Brent, but that's okay. The main problem with this movie is that it's just, again, strong on plot, weak on character. And when it reminds me of the first Mission Impossible, actually, where in Mission Impossible, it has a lot of plot to it, too much of it, but then all these characters are a bit weak. And beyond the set pieces in the original Mission Impossible, the '96 film with Tom Cruise, and a very good-looking Christian Scott Thomas, it must be said, and all the other, and it's shot in Prague beautifully, the first little action scene. It's just not that good. And it's just, to me, it's just like, at least in Mission Impossible, there are the iconic stuff. There's the opening scene where half the major characters are killed, or the famous vault scene, or the climax scene, but beyond that, it's just like getting to the filler bits. And in this, it's sort of like that, but the action scenes aren't as interesting, because Christopher Nolan used to be really good at directing action. It's fine here. There's some really good intense stuff. But again, there's plot holes about... what's that? The guy who's driving the car in reverse in this action scene, this major action scene, who's driving it originally if he's going back to do it? Or is it all set in stone? Again, it's like the Terminator paradox, but again, the Terminator is a much better film than this, because Christopher Nolan is no James Cameron. And, the other problem... what are the other ones? Kenneth Branagh, the other one of this action scene where they go and raid some art museum or something for this painting, and it's just, how are they already in there exactly? It's just, I don't know, it's just, it doesn't make it much sense. And it's just a shame because these acting performances are good and there's pointless characters. Michael Caine's in this for about 5 seconds. And they call him Sir Michael Crosby, you know, stroking his ego a bit. Great, and I'm still glad he's getting work, and Christopher Nolan, to be fair, does give him a lot of good work. Yeah, but that's really all you can say about it. He has no point in this movie. All these characters are plot devices, sans the woman at the end. And again, it's just a bit incoherent, really. Especially... and the main problem with this thing is there's a villain, Kenneth Branagh, playing a Russian oligarch in all subtle commentary, who's going to end the world or something with the devices or something that he has. Again, it's like the lament configuration of Hellraiser, except Hellraiser is a brilliant movie, and Tenet isn't. And it's just, Kenneth Branagh is a great actor, but it's Kevin Branagh. He's usually either the good guy in these films, or when he's not, he's sort of like this charming asshole like he is in the Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. But other than that, it's like, in this film he puts on a Russian accent. It's clear that it's Kenneth Branagh putting on that accent. Also the fact that he's not particularly interesting as a bad guy. He's just a bit one-dimensional. Ugh. What is this, like an 80s action movie from the 90s where it's like, well, what are these terrible children's films from the 90s where it's like, oh, the Russian bad guys or the Eastern European mobsters, or it's like the Mr. Brown Boys movies, or it's Eastern European gangsters. Like, yeah, that's not interesting. Maybe David Cronenberg's Eastern Promises is, but this isn't Eastern Promises. This is meant to be the best action movie of the year, and the thing that's going to revitalize the movie industry after the pointless COVID lockdown. But that's a subject. So just read Peter Hitchens on that if you want to get my real views on that. But the main problem with this is just that Christopher Nolan has done all this sort of stuff. It's clearly his also to be a Bond person. There are several women in this who could be Bond girls, very attractive women, it must be said, but at the same time, it's just that beyond the blonde one, I can't remember the actress's name, forgive me, none of these characters are interesting. And that's a bit of a problem when it involves the end of the world, when it involves all these massive time hops and stuff. It's a bit of a problem. And if I wanted to watch a film about trying to stop a parallel universe from folding in on itself, I'll go and watch Donnie Darko. Because Donnie Darko is, you know, very plot heavy, but it has good characters, and the acting's much better than Donnie Darko. The guy who plays Frank is a lot more of an intimidating villain than Kenneth Branagh. And it's just like, what are the other problems with this movie? The action scenes are good, but they're not riveting. It reminds me of Gladiator, where they're good action scenes, but you don't particularly care about the characters within them. Like, again, Doug Walker said about that. I shouldn't keep citing him, given all the controversy around China Awesome, but that's beside the point. There's not really much to it, if I'm being honest. And I don't want to say it's bad. It's clearly not a bad film, but it's just like, Christopher Nolan has done this film over and over again. He did Inception, he did Interstellar, he did The Prestige. What are the other ones? God. Memento. All these really complex films and stuff like that, which have very flat characters. That's okay, because the plot's heavy enough. But I don't know. It's just not particularly well... It's just... There's no staying power to it. Inception at least has a lot of good stuff. And the score as well. It wasn't Hans Zimmer, his usual collaborator, or someone else. And he just, like, lays on the synthesizer. It wouldn't surprise me that half of it is just, like... There's a bit in Frankie Ball's book, The Work-Consuming Diary, where he talks about how a lot of the times he wrote his newspaper column for The Sun when he used to do that. He had a cat walk across his keyboard and that was it. It wouldn't surprise me that during this it was just, like... Hans Zimmer... Oh, not Hans Zimmer, the new guy going... Duh, because it just doesn't add to the tension. It just feels a bit lazy. It reminds me of like in Seven, where Howard Shaw would sort of overblown the horns when scenes are meant to be terrifying and sort of like, especially the sloth scene. But again, David Fincher is much better than Christopher Nolan in my film. He's made more good movies, and even stuff like, even when it's not particularly good, at least there's interesting bits to it, like Panic Room, which, in my opinion, is still his worst movie. But then again, I haven't seen Alien 3 in God knows how long, and that wasn't all his fault. And Panic Room just meh. This is just okay. Well, okay, it's perfectly good. It's perfectly fine, some of blockbuster stuff, but you know, Christopher Nolan can do better than this. I hope he does stop doing these sort of films now, because you know he's done about 6 of them. At least Terry Gilliam, when he does like complex movies with these sort of characters, actually, yeah, he has characters. So there's characters in 12 Monkeys, for example, or Brazil. And also, they're not all the same, they're different. You know, Brazil is different from 12 Monkeys, 12 Monkeys is different from the Zero film, which that's a brilliant sci-fi film. Heavily underrated, by the way. Christopher Waltz's best performance. Shows how good he can be when he's not in a Quentin Tarantino movie or... what's the other thing? Or slumming in a villain role like he did in Green Hornet, whatever rubbish he stars in. I don't know. But the good stuff is that the performances are generally good. It's paced perfectly fine. I was never really bored during this. I can't say that for say stuff like Joker, which was the worst, probably beyond Red Joan, the worst movie of the last year. And I know it's a bit controversial, but I don't care. But it's just a shame because all this hype around it, I think it's just because it's like Christopher Nolan's sort of this sacred cow that you can't touch, which is stupid because he's a filmmaker, not a deity. It's the same way like Quentin Tarantino, Radiohead. Apologies for that. My filming got a bit sloppy there. Will it stay? Yes. Oh, that's a better angle, funnily enough. I have to get that in mind. Oh, get a new one of these, sod it. But yeah, that's the main problems with this film, which is that it's not very well written. It's, well, alright, it's well written, but it's not interesting. And it's not particularly well alright. The main problems with this film is that Kenneth Branagh is a terrible villain. He's miscast in this as all hell. Couldn't they just get Ben Kingsley? I mean, I've seen him in Trans-Siberian when he can put on the Russian accent. And, you know, he can actually sound like a Russian, whereas Kenneth Branagh just sounds like he's putting on an accent. I mean, it's not as bad to say, like, Tom Cruise in, was it, Far and Away, when he put on that Irish accent that wasn't convincing to nobody. Even I think Nicole Kidman was like, no. Or Ron Howard. Yeah, I was watching Dead Calm, actually, on this holiday, that film she was in with Sam Neill and Billy Zane. It's like, that's probably aged a little better than Tenet's going to do. And that really never comes in the story either. There's bits in the film that I've forgotten, like that, like this big scene at the beginning that's really never referenced again. Or that Q woman who's in the first few minutes of this film. She's never referenced again. It's just like... oh man. These characters... it's just a shame because Christopher Nolan can do much better. The Dark Knight trilogy is still fantastic. Still some of the best superhero stuff out there. Batman Begins is still the best of that trilogy. I would say Dark Knight second and, you know, Lesser Returns. But it's still a good trilogy. What else? It's just... Inception was good 10 years ago as well. All the stuff usually I've liked. I've got Following. I'm not sure how good that is. My sister didn't find Memento particularly endearing. She found it a bit too confusing. I would suggest to watch a Donnie Darko, but it's just like he's done enough of these movies and I wanted to sort of move on. It's in the same sort of way like if, speaking of Quentin Tarantino, like he's done the same movie like 20 times. Can't he do something else? And at least with Christopher Nolan, the films are still half watchable, whereas, very controversial opinion, Quentin Tarantino's movies have, you know, not held up really since Jackie Brown, which is his last great film in my opinion. Inglourious was perfectly fine. I haven't seen Django actually, or any of the ones he did from the last decade. It's okay, this film. Well, okay, it's a decent film. I just don't think it's this great revolutionary picture, and it's just a shame that I just want Broccoli or whoever's in charge of Bond now to just give Christopher Nolan the Bond job so maybe he could just drop these movies and do something a little bit more interesting. I mean, if Guillermo del Toro can go from art house to popcorn movie in just... and it's perfectly fine for him, even though I much prefer Guillermo del Toro's popcorn movies, actually. Blade 2's better than Devil's Backbone, in my opinion, because it's a lot more entertaining. And the one-dimensional villains in Blade 2 are excusable because it's a popcorn movie, whereas in Devil's Backbone, when it's a fascist dictator... it's not really, because they're meant to be complex and it's just one-dimensional boring villains. My attitude is that I think Tenet's perfectly fine, good performances. If that woman, the main damsel in distress, I'll call her because I can't remember her name, was at least a developed character, then I think she'd be worth watching. I think then the film will be worth watching in that sense. Because she's the only one with character, she's very good looking. Anyway, but that's just me being a silly ass. I just... Dan Hodges was a lot more critical. The Daily Mail columnist, or Mail and Sunday columnist, I can't remember. Pete Hitchens gets a bit pissed off if you bring that up. He said something along the lines of on his Twitter, something like it was incoherent and Kenneth Branagh was a laughable villain. He was legitimately, and he goes out in the most stupid way. Major spoilers. He gets knocked off like it's a jackass stunt on one of these stupid was it You've Been Framed sketches where they fall off or something. It's like a frat boy thing. It's not. This guy's meant to be the end of the world. It's like if it's Thanos in the end of That's a bit inappropriate. I apologize. At the end of Infinity War or something. Sorry, or Endgame or something. Just got slapped by the Iron Man kid, and that was it. Or Pinhead. I can't believe I keep bringing up Hellraiser. Got just hit by a rock, and that killed him. But it's just like, this film could have been so much better than it was. And there's just it's just like a lot of action, a lot of noise, but there's no point to it. It's like that Talking Heads song, Psycho Killer. You're talking a lot, but you're not saying anything. And again, this is excusable when Christopher Nolan was doing 2 or 3 movies, like early in his career, like again, exception. The lack of characters is fine for like the first 3 or 4 times you do it, but when it gets to like the 5th film and you're exploring the same sort of themes, it's boring. It really is boring, because at least I'm a little bit of a filmmaker. I've made films, I'm going to upload them shortly to this channel, and they're probably not going to be that good, but I've not been throwing like $200 million or whatever it is that Christopher Nolan gets his money from. I'm glad Christopher Nolan keeps making films, because usually they're decent, and usually they're much better than a bad filmmaker's best film. So they're much better than, say, I don't know, Francis Lawrence when he makes good films, I guess. Or, one of the trauma movies when they happen to be half watchable or something. Or, who else is really awful at filmmaking? Rob Zombie when he makes something watchable, I guess. I don't know, maybe those are controversial things, but I don't particularly care, because having watched parts of Devil's Rejects is like the equivalent of drinking bleach, at least on the Horror Channel, when I did that a few years ago. And is it good? I think it's perfectly fine. If you want to go and see it, I would say see it if you want. I wouldn't watch this again, personally. It's a one and done sort of thing, like No Country for Old Men was. But at least that film was interesting and had a really good villain in it. But this is like, really? And yeah, that's the main thing. It's hard to care about these characters, like Gladiator, where you don't care about these characters. So for all the spectacle and all the action, there's no substance to it. There really is no substance to it, because these characters are flat as a pancake and they're not interesting. They're just ciphers for, the plot to move forward, which is fine, but you can't really do a very serious movie like this and then do it and then have no characters that you care about. Like, I don't care about John David Washington's character, as interesting as he is. And there's so many pointless characters. Like, what's the point of that Indian lady in it? Or the point of several of these things. Robert Pattinson, you don't care about him. You don't care about any of these characters. They're just not interesting. There's no reason you can't do good blockbusters with interesting characters. If Christopher Nolan can do good Batman movies with interesting characters, there's no reason he can't do original movies without interesting characters. Or if I'm trying to think of another one. I guess it's not a good enough example because it makes it sound a bit like a low pleb, I guess. Like the Jurassic Park, the new ones. At least if they can have somewhat charismatic characters. Admittedly, they're a bit more entertaining than this, if I'm being honest. I understand, you do? Well, how do you not like high art? And I don't particularly care. It's my taste. Deal with it. But those films at least have Chris Pratt, who's very charismatic. These people like Stone Cold, like serious, and all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, have good characters and I'll do it, if you know what I mean. At least in, what was it? I'm trying to think of a good comparison. In Apocalypto, I guess. It's not good when I compare it to all these other movies which I could be watching instead. In, say, Apocalypto, the Mel Gibson movie, those characters are it's serious. It's very much a serious movie. But at the same time, the characters in that are, have arcs and whatnot, and they're interesting enough for you to care about Jaguar Paw and his ilk. This is not a bad movie, but it's just, he's done this over and over again. And I want something different from the supposed best movie maker of modern times. And just like, you wouldn't just go watch the same comedian over and over again if he keeps telling the same jokes that you've heard over and over again. I mean, maybe there's somebody who can make a business of that, but why would you want to go and see that? This is your own money. And again, I would be a bit more forgiving if there was something new, but there's nothing new in this. He's done all this sort of stuff before, and this is just diminishing returns. It's not bad. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I saw it, and it was a good, fun Friday night film, but that's it. There's no substance to it. It's just very lame and weak. A lot of it. It's not boring, it's not bad, but it's not that good. And overall, I think it won't hold up as well as, say, Inception or Batman Begins or even The Dark Knight, and probably even knowing, but or not knowing, following. Because at least those films are interesting, I guess. So, final thoughts on Tenet. It's not that good. The good stuff is good, good action, good pacing, somewhat good storytelling, somewhat original. Even though I think Donnie Darko did this concept a lot better, like 20 years ago, and that film had half the budget, like 10 times less the budget of this. So you can't excuse. And yeah, the bad stuff is that the characters aren't interesting, and the plot and the bad guys crap. So it's a 3 out of 5, and there's nothing more to say than that. I hope to do more of these motor movie reviews, and thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.